Have you heard this amazing Bible verse that says, "For we know that all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose"? That's Romans chapter 8, verse 28. I love that verse. Hey, boys and girls. This is Uncle Brian, and I'm so glad you've tuned in today. I've got a story for you coming from that verse. It's a story that's been told in many different countries around the world and in different ways, and so I hope it blesses you. I've read it in different quote books and illustration books, but it's an awesome story. So let's imagine, okay? Let's imagine that the story comes to us from the land of Africa. And I want you to imagine this incredibly important king. He had the crown, he had the riches, he probably had pet cheetahs, kind of like what the Bible says King Solomon did back in the ages when he was king of Israel there. And so maybe he had some pet cheetahs or some leopards, had these beautiful eagles and different things. Amazing king. Well, he had a number of servants that would go with him. And this one particular servant, now, Otong's not my servant here, but Otong's going to act the part here, okay? This one servant would be with the king and would go hunting with him. The king loved to go out into the wild and to have his bows and arrows and all these. This is a story from a while back. And he would love to be able to hunt and get the big game and then have them stuffed and take them back to his throne room. Well, one day, he and his servant were out hunting. And the servant would always have a bow, and he'd be ready. And then the king would have his bow, because if the king made a bad shot, the servant would shoot it anyway. And so here they are, they're hunting, they're looking for a lion. And they're crouched down, and they think the servant has said, king, I hear him, he's right over there. And so the king's getting ready, and he goes over there, and the servant is watching, and while the servant's watching and the king's looking to try to find where that tiger is, maybe hiding behind a bush, all of a sudden there's another tiger comes running from this side and jumps and attacks the king, and pulls him down to the ground and begins to bite, and the king's up there protecting his face, and immediately the servant jumps out with his spear, kills the lion, and saves the king's life. But the king's finger got bit, and it had to be cut off. And the king was so angry. What kind of a foolish servant are you? How dare you? You would allow this lion to come and sneak up and to take my finger. You're going to prison. And the servant said, yes, master. All things work together for good. And he's just got even more angry. What do you mean all things work together for good? Take him to prison right now. And the king was just angry. Could have had him killed, but he did respect the servant at least, and the servant had served him for so long with his life that he didn't have him killed. And so the servant is there in jail. And the king's thinking to himself, he says all things work together for good. Well, let's see what he says. He's been in jail for a while. Well, the king still went out hunting, and he took new servants and other people, and he was in a different place. This time he went further than he'd ever gone in his kingdom, and he came right up to the edge of a place of a neighboring tribe that was very angry and didn't like the king. And they ambushed the king and all of his servants, and all the servants were killed except the king. And they were preparing to cook and eat the king. What a horrible place to get trapped. The cannibals. And so they were getting ready to do this, and they were preparing to I don't know if they were going to roast him on a fire or put him in a boiling water. I don't know what it was. And just as they're getting ready to do that, they looked and they saw his finger was missing. And they said, we can't do this. We can't eat him. We can't offer him to our gods because he's not a perfect sacrifice. We wanted a king that would be perfect, but he's not a perfect. Just send him back to his people, disgraced. How could he be? To think that a king with a missing finger, what kind of a king is that? And they just sent him away, and he lived. And he came back just amazed. Of course, he lost his servants. And he came back, and he's like, I don't understand. That was horrible. And so he asked for his servant to come out And the servant came and bowed before him and said, "Oh, king, live forever." And the king says, "You always say everything works for good. I don't understand. Here you've been in jail, and I was trapped, and how can that be true?" And the servant said, "Oh, my wise king, you were set free because you were missing a finger, which you lost because of the lion." He says, "Yes, but you've been in prison this whole time." And the servant said, "Yes, master, because if I was there with you, I have all my fingers. I would have been killed. God kept me alive and kept you alive. He's worked all things out for good." Isn't that an amazing story, boys and girls? Oh, a cool story. And that comes from history. Just amazing things to think. From Romans 8:28, "For we know that all things work together for good, according to his purpose, for those that he loves and calls according to his purpose." What an amazing verse. Romans 8:28. I love that verse. And you know, boys and girls, Uncle Brian's not just telling you that because it's a great story from history or because it's even a Bible truth. My wife and I, we have learned that ourselves. We've had to go through horrible things. We've had to suffer the loss of our first 2 children in a car accident. And yet God has held us, changed us, turned things for good. And our boy and our girl that we lost, we haven't lost them. We will see them again. The Bible is very clear that those who fall asleep in Jesus, in the love of God, they will rise again. And we'll get to see them again. Oh, we can't wait for that day. And by the way, because of the way that God has turned things out, I have 4 more children. And I'll have 2 more in heaven. Excited about that. So thanks for listening today for Uncle Brian's Stories Worth Repeating. I'm so glad you've joined us. And if you're watching by YouTube, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel so you can get more stories as they come out whenever they do. And of course, keep following me on Facebook. May God richly bless you, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.